Linda, you got married about 19, you were quite young. How were things with your husband when you were courting as such?
Yeah, everything was fine. We were courting 4 years. I mean, he was my first ever boyfriend or what have you. Yeah, we got married when I was 19. We had a big church wedding, 10 bridesmaids in the Catholic Church. Nothing towards in the 4 years at all. Nothing at all.
Okay, and were you in love?
I was.
I'm very much looking forward.
First love, you know.
I'm very much looking forward to getting married.
Yeah.
And then when you got married, how were things like? Did you ever have any suspicion at any stage that he could be violent or anything?
None at all. So
No.
we were married 10 days and he hadn't mentioned any housekeeping money or anything like that. And so I asked him about what we were going to do about the housekeeping money. And he said, well, I was working, so he intended for me to support him.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, my wages weren't enough to pay all the bills and everything, so I said, well, I've got enough, and that's the first time I got hit around in my first black eye. And I was still quite naive, so I came home and I cooked a nice dinner and lit candles on the table. And he came in from work and he said, what's the... And I said, I went to the doctors this morning, he's confirmed. I said that, yeah. And the table was tossed upside down, and yeah, and I got well and truly battered because he didn't intend having children. I'd have to pack up work, and then everything just went completely downhill from there.
Oh my God! And did you again during that first pregnancy?
Many times.
And what was your initial reaction from the first time? What were you feeling?
I couldn't believe what was happening, you know, because my parents had a brilliant marriage, and like that now the psychological thing starts coming in. You know, well, it was your fault now if you made me do it. Now, if you had done something, if you had told me or prepared me for something, but because you happened, it's your fault. You made me do it.
And it was your fault when you had to provide the housekeeping money, and it was your fault that you had got pregnant.
Yeah. You know, so and then the next really bad time was when the week I packed up work. I worked as long as I could, and my boss actually said to me that even though I was a filing clerk, you know, that you got to leave.
Okay.
You know, there was only 3 weeks to go for my the birth of my son, and so. Of course, I went home and that was my last day in work, and I got beaten up. That was on the Friday. I went into labour.
And it's terrifying, like being beaten up when you're pregnant. You're obviously trying to protect a bump or whatever and protect yourself.
Yeah. I went into labour then, and my son was born on a Tuesday.
So as such, the beating induced the labour?
Yeah. So I was 4 days in labour on him, so it was quite horrendous then when he was born. I was in hospital 10 days then. Yeah. And I just went from there. I went up to the priest and I asked the priest to come and talk to him and stuff like that, you know. And never thought once of going to the guards, do you know. And
why do you think you went to the priest rather than the guards or a solicitor?
I think it's because you grew up with, the sanctity of marriage and all the rest of it. And there was no family law either. But that time here in Ireland.
Linda, you were just talking there about when you were pregnant with your second child as well, that your husband again was showing the very same violence as he had shown when you were pregnant with the first.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah.
What happened?
Well, it was just actually what happened. I just remember then now that with my first child, of course you can imagine I was very homesick and everything then because I'm completely isolated. I actually went to a water's edge and nearly stepped off the end, and it was only somebody come up off a boat that I realised I was just about to step off into the sea.
And you just literally thought it was the only way out?
I never even thought anything, I don't remember walking to that point in that town and actually doing that.
You said to me earlier that this whole time that you think that you were in a complete daze for the whole time that the violence was going on.
You go into a daze. I mean, my family doctor, I went to him because it was like you couldn't wake up out of a nightmare, and you couldn't snap out of it. And so he said to me what had happened, and this is like going quite a few years later, you know, is your brain actually puts up a barrier.
Okay.
Because otherwise you would have gone insane.
Kind of like a coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism, yeah. But you know, to this day, that barrier is still there. It's like living in a dream existence. Once that actually happens, you can't lift it.
So it's even kind of there now, all these
Even
years later?
Yeah, from what happened in them days, it's still there.
Oh my God.
But we were talking, you asked me there, about my second child. And I was fine. I lost my third child.
And was that because of the violence?
Violence, yeah.
So did it get worse when you were pregnant?
Yes, much worse when you were pregnant.
And was anybody picking up on this, GPs or public health nurses or anybody at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I picked my son up off the floor, 6.5 months pregnant, and I picked him up off the floor, and his arm and leg was missing.
Oh God.
And I was still in hospital when the nuns put his body in a coffin with a man whose funeral was taking place, and I've never found his grave. And I've searched, but I've never found his grave.
And this was the fetus as such?
Well, when he's 6.5 months pregnant, yeah. I mean, it's a fully formed child.
Yeah, absolutely.
I lost 3 children, one at 4 months, one at 6.5 months, and one at just over 2 months. But I actually saw a medium, and my daughter actually tricked me into that, and anyway I went in, and this medium said to me, "You've lost 3 children." And but she said, and I just didn't answer, and she said, "Put your right hand on your left shoulder," and I did, just like that. And she said, "You've just given your son a caress. He became your guardian angel from the day he died."
So I saw that on your door today. You have a big belief in angels. Did you think that
that's
was
only recently? That's only in the last 5-6 weeks.
How, like, the first thing people will ask, how come you stayed? You were obviously feeling terrible. You felt suicidal at the time. What stopped you from leaving all this time?
After that, losing my son, and I went back to the country where I'm from, and I saw a solicitor, and to see about getting the marriage, finished. And you can't leave the country where your children are born without both parents' consent. So I could actually keep my eldest child because he was born in the other country.
Yeah.
But the second child, I had to return to the land of her birth.
Okay. So you were finding both with the solicitor and with the priest you'd spoken to earlier that everything was going against you?
Yeah. So I came back to Ireland and ended up with 4 children eventually. I mean, he put me in hospital when I was pregnant, but I have other children that survived.
Was your husband working, and was he giving you money?
Yeah, he was working, but he only gave you a mere pittance. I didn't realise at the time, but back then you could have 2 wage packets. And so what he was bringing home and showing me is, well, he didn't ever show me his wage packet, but I didn't know that 1 wage packet was being invested. So I used to clean houses and take in sewing and do anything to put the food on the table.
So were you actually struggling to put food on the table?
Very struggling, yeah. And I remember one time asking him for money for a loaf of bread, and I got hit because I didn't have the money for a loaf of bread. I remember a very important time that I couldn't afford butter, so I actually bought margarine. And I got beaten up because there was no butter, and I had to have butter by the following day. But I had no money to get butter, and I actually stole a ½ pound of butter out of the shop so I wouldn't get beaten up.
And all the time.
And I had 2 small children that time.
And how were your nerves as such at that stage?
Well, you were Jeannie Mac. You were living on the edge all the time. But this time he wanted me to sign a blank piece of paper, and I wouldn't put my signature on it. And he was just just like the voice was droning on and on and on, and I was peeling potatoes, and the next thing I turned with the knife in my hand, and he had just walked out the kitchen, the door shut, because I would have killed him. And I went up to the doctor's the following day, and I said to my doctor, and no, reiterate, go back a bit on that. Next thing I remember, I'd left my kitchen, and I was in the quay, down a deep water quay.
Oh God.
And it was January, and I was up to my waist in icy water, and I don't remember walking a mile from my home down there and walking into the sea. And my doctor said, like, only I'd gone down the steps and not just stepped off the end, I wouldn't be here telling this tale now. But when I was telling the doctor I got pneumonia, I was went up to the doctor, and he said, how did I feel? How did I feel when I realised I wanted to kill him? And I said, I actually thought, doctor, I said, I wouldn't get committed. I said, they just have to look at my medical cards, and this is like 11 years, after 11 years of this, you know. They don't have to look at my medical notes. And I said, I don't think I would get committed. And he said, I'm very sorry to tell you, he said, but I'm not allowed, he said, to write down domestic abuse. He said, on your notes, there's nothing in your notes about a domestic abuse.
All the different, you know, say the broken ribs, the black eyes, had they actually been recorded as injuries?
As injuries, but I had presented myself as accident prone. And the 3 children were abortions. Your body aborted.
For how long did the beatings go on in total? How many years?
Right up until the whole of my life living with him, 24 years.
24 years, and all through that 24 years, like, how often were you going to hostels? And
I went up and down. I went to the Battered Wives Home. I went to Adele House. The nuns in Adele House were really good with me. I mean, I was a church goer. I was in a choir in church and things like that. And I think I wasn't the normal type of person, she said.
Yeah.
One nun said I wasn't a normal type of person going to these places.
And did you talk to anyone about the abuse? Like, did your friends?
I wasn't allowed to have people to come into the house, you know. With what friends I had to make sure they weren't around when he came in from work.
You had 4 children then at this point. And did the children know what was going on?
I don't know, you would look, I mean, like on the radio programme the other day, there was a little girl and she said, they knew what went on, but you don't talk about it. So I suppose, yeah, we didn't talk about it.
So they never discussed it with you?
No,
you never discussed it.
No.
You were living in a town where your husband was from, so you had a lot of in-laws around. Did you make any attempt to try and talk to them about it? Or
I walked down the town with black eyes and not even one person asked me, oh, what happened?
So you had no help from the community as such beyond
None
your
at
neighbour?
all. I went into the sea that time and I had on a long tweed skirt like maxi length, and I came out to the sea and I was coming along the town and I was holding the skirt and all the water coming out of my skirt, and I'd lost my slippers in the water, and I came all the way through the town and not one person asked me, was I okay? What happened? Nothing.
So, you know, if there's women out there now at the moment that are going through the hell that you lived with for 24 years, what would you say to them?
Get out. That's easier said than done. And I mean, there'd be people then I'd be saying that's easier said, because I was told by my neighbour to leave, that the children would go their own way when they get up. They won't thank you for staying.
Something must have happened, you know, where you actually reached complete breaking point.
I was actually in my kitchen, and I'd been in hospital. I've been in intensive care. I have had 109 laser treatments on my eyes to restore my sight. I'm still partially blind in one eye.
This is all from beatings?
All from the beatings. And I still had nowhere to go when I come out. And I got another protection order, but I still had to go back into where I lived. So it was Saturday evening, and around lunchtime, well actually it was about 5 o'clock, and himself came in, and my 2 younger children were sitting at the table having their dinner, and I had no food. There wasn't enough food for me to have food, and this was just the start of the week, you know.
But would that happen a lot, that there'd be no money there for food for the week?
Yeah, and there was many a time I wouldn't have a dinner, and but the 2 young ones were eating the dinner, and he came in and he was roaring and shouting about something. I don't know what the heck, I can't remember what that was about. And this wasn't long after I'd come from being home a few weeks in intensive care, and he was banging the table with his fists. And I just put his dinner down on the table in front of him, and as he's banging the table like that, my son's dinner upended on the table, and he told me to clean up that effing mess. And if he did, something just snapped. and I picked up his dinner and I slammed it into his chest, and I rubbed it on in his chest, and I told him that if my son couldn't have dinner, he wasn't getting no dinner. And I ran. Oh God, I ran. Jeannie Mac, I was terrified, and I ran. I actually ran upstairs and I grabbed a bag and I threw some clothes in it, and I ran back down out the front door, and actually the Angelus was ringing out on the church at that time. And I ran and I didn't know what to do, and I needed to get away from where I was, and but I was afraid he'd stop me. I had no transport, so I needed public transport. And I actually was hiding in a doorway when a taxi driver slowed down and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Jenny," said, "Why, problems again?" Because after being in intensive care now, people, it was out, you know. And I said, "Yeah," and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I need to get away from here." And I said, without him seeing me, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I need to get up to Cork." I said, "To a refuge." So he told me to climb into the taxi and get on the floor of the back so that he wouldn't be seen helping me. And that when we drove then until we got out of the town, and then he told me to sit up, "It's okay, we won't be seen now." And he took me up to Cork and he dropped me off by St Francis's Church in Cork. And I was really traumatised. I mean, I'd left my children behind. I had just run for my life after doing that, you know. And I went into the church and the confessions were on. I'd been to confession that afternoon, and the adoration hour, because I used to do all that, you know. And I went in, someone came out the confessional box, and I left my bags and all just on the floor. I didn't even realise till after, and I went to confessional and I just spoke to the priest, and he said, "Start a confession." I said, "I don't need confession, Father." I said, "I was at confession earlier." And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, I've run away, Father. I need help. I need help, Father. I've left my children behind. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. I said, I'm terrified. I can't go back there because he'll kill me. And I need some help." And he said, "Well, haven't you got family?" And I said, "I haven't." And he said, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I rang Adele House." And I said, "Sister Christopher said there's room there for me." So he said, "But I need help, Father. I need help now. Can you help me, Father?" And I was hysterical. And he said, "So you've actually left your husband?" And I said, "I have, Father, I have. I've actually run. I'm terrified. I have run." And he said, "For your penance, say 1 Our Father and 3 Hail Marys," and he shut the door. And I came out and I was on the quays in Cork City on my own. And I was looking at the water. And then I thought of my kids. And I didn't jump off the bridge.
What did the nuns say to you then? How did the nuns help you at that point?
They were just there, do you know? So they made you a cup of tea and they showed you to your room. They never interfered, they never asked, they never got involved. They never got involved, you know. It was,
were you offered counselling or anything?
No.
No?
No.
I think things have changed since in Adele House there's counselling. So as such you offered a haven, but you weren't given any...
No emotional or counselling, and that's why now I'm a counsellor myself.
Okay. So what do you think, what were the gaps that you needed that weren't there for you when you were going through all of this?
All this talk, you know, about I would have beaten him when he was asleep. People would say they wouldn't take the abuse, you know, they would beat him when they were asleep.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that because they wake up.
Yeah.
Do you know? It's not a question of just taking beatings. You'd fight back, you'd protect yourself, but the more you fought back, the worse it became.
Oh God.
Do you know? The more irate it would make him, you know. So it wasn't a case of just you stood there with your hands folded and did it. I mean, in the beginning, you fought back, and in the end you just protected yourself, because the more you fought back, the worse the beatings got. Okay. I got legal separation, I got the house, but then I had victimisation from all the extended family, and I ended going back to my home, and for a holiday, sort of, to over the stress, and when I got to the ferry port to come back, I freaked out, I was screaming. I couldn't, you're not getting me on that boat. You're not getting me on the boat.
So you and Maggie stayed?
And I stayed. And so then, yeah, it was really traumatic, but at the end of the day, I'm a survivor.
Yeah.
I am a survivor.
Yeah.
I got through it in the end. I've come up the other side. I'm a counsellor myself now. I deal with, I'm an eclectic counsellor, so I take on all forms of counselling, but I can empathise with people with domestic abuse, which makes a big difference than just sympathising with domestic abuse.